Your support keeps these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
My name is Richard, and I am 42 years old. For as long as I can remember, the farm was my life. It wasn't just land and buildings. It was sweat, calloused hands, and endless summers spent under the sun. It was waking up before dawn to milk cows, staying up past midnight to fix broken fences, and learning the rhythm of the soil as if it were my own heartbeat. The family farm had been in our name for 3 generations, worth nearly $500,000 in land and assets, and I always believed I would be the one to carry it forward. Growing up, it wasn't Daniel, my younger brother, or anyone else out in the fields. It was me. I was the one on my father's side, learning how to drive the tractor before I even had a license, patching barns in the middle of winter, and sacrificing weekends while my friends went to football games. My father used to say, "This place will be yours one day, Richard. You're the only one with the grit to keep it alive." And I believed him. Those words fueled me through years of backbreaking labor. But somewhere along the line, things began to change. As Daniel grew older, he left for the city, chasing a career in sales. He barely visited, only coming back for holidays, always in polished shoes and fancy clothes, while I stood in muddy boots. Yet despite doing almost nothing for the farm, Daniel had something I didn't: my father's admiration. He knew how to charm, how to talk smooth, how to make our father laugh at stories of the city. I was the workhorse, the dependable one, but Daniel was the golden boy. I ignored the favoritism for years, telling myself that hard work would speak louder than smooth words. But the cracks showed when my father started making offhand comments. Daniel could bring new ideas if he wanted. He'd say, or, "You work hard, Richard, but you don't think big like your brother." I swallowed the bitterness and kept working, telling myself it didn't matter. Then came the day that shattered everything. It was a chilly October afternoon when my father called me into the farmhouse kitchen. He sat at the old wooden table with a stack of papers, his expression hard. Daniel was there too, leaning casually in the corner, smirking like he already knew something I didn't. "Richard," my father said, clearing his throat, "I've been thinking about the future. The farm's value is close to $500,000 now. It's too much for one man to handle. I've decided to pass it down to Daniel." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him right. "Daniel? Dad, he hasn't worked a day here in years. I've given my life to this place." My father's eyes narrowed. "You've done good work, Richard, but Daniel has vision. He knows how to modernize, how to bring in real money. You're stuck in the old ways." Daniel smirked wider, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Don't take it personally, brother. It's business. Dad just wants what's best for the farm." I felt my hands trembling, rage bubbling under my skin. Business? This wasn't just land. This was my life. Every scar on my body, every sleepless night, it was all tied to that farm. And now, after decades of loyalty, my father was cutting me out. That I slammed my fist on the table. "No, I won't let you take this from me. I earned this farm with my blood. If you think I'll walk away quietly, you're wrong." My father's face hardened. "Careful, son. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." But as I stormed out of that kitchen, my heart pounding, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going down without a fight. The farm wasn't just dirt and barns. It was my identity, my legacy. And if my father and brother wanted to strip it from me, they'd have to do it the hard way, because I was ready to fight back. I barely slept that night. I paced my living room until dawn, my mind replaying my father's words over and over again. "I've decided to pass it down to Daniel." Those words cut deeper than any knife. How could he? After everything I'd sacrificed, every blister, every drop of sweat, he was ready to hand over nearly $500,000 worth of land and legacy to a man who hadn't touched a pitchfork in years. Why sunrise? My anger had hardened into resolve. If my father and Daniel thought they could shove me aside, they were wrong. I wasn't going to let the years of my life vanish into nothing. I'd fought too hard, given too much, to walk away quietly. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. His name was Jenkins, an older man with a sharp mind and little patience for nonsense. I laid everything out: the years I'd worked the farm, the promises my father had made, the sudden decision to cut me out. Jenkins leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his notebook. Richard, he said, verbal promises don't hold much weight in court. But if you've invested years of unpaid labor, if you can prove you essentially sustained the farm, you may have a claim. We'll need documentation, financial records, testimonies, anything that shows you weren't just helping but carrying this farm. I felt a glimmer of hope. I have receipts, logs, even old contracts I signed with suppliers. I can prove I ran this place while Daniel was off in the city. Jenkins nodded. Good. We'll build a case. If your father tries to sign the land over, we'll challenge it. That same evening, I drove back to the farm. My father was on the porch, sipping coffee, looking at me like I was already a stranger. Daniel's car was in the driveway, polished and shiny as ever. I walked up the steps, my hands shaking, but my voice firm. Dad, I said, I've spoken to a lawyer. If you try to hand the farm to Daniel, I'll fight it in court. His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross his face. But Daniel was quick to jump in, smirking as always. Really, Richard? You're going to sue your own father? That's low, even for you. I clenched my fists, forcing myself not to rise to his bait. What's low is stealing what I work for. You think you can waltz in after years of absence and claim this farm? Over my dead body. My father slammed his mug down, the ceramic shattering against the porch. Enough. You think this farm owes you something? You worked because you were supposed to. You're my son. That doesn't mean you own it. His words stung, but I held my ground. Then you'll hear it from a judge. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding. I knew I had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. But I also knew I had no choice. If I didn't stand up now, I'd lose everything. Over the next few weeks, I gathered every piece of evidence I could. Receipts from equipment I bought out of my own pocket, tax records showing my income came from the farm, testimonies from neighbors who had seen me running the place year after year. Even the local feed supplier wrote a statement confirming I was the one handling all the business. Piece by piece, I was building my case. Meanwhile, my relationship with my father grew colder by the day. He refused to speak to me directly, sending messages through Daniel instead. Daniel, of course, loved every minute of it. He'd call just to taunt me. Face it, Richard, he sneered over the phone one evening. Dad sees me as the future. You're just a hired help. This farm will be mine, whether you like it or not. I hung up before I said something I regret, but his words burned inside me. Hired help. After decades of sacrifice, that was how they saw me. The day finally came when my father tried to sign over the deed. But thanks to Jenkins, we were ready. We filed an injunction, freezing the transfer until the case could be heard. My father was furious, Daniel livid, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I had power. The battle for the farm had officially begun, and deep down, I knew this was no longer just about land or money. This was about respect, about proving that I wasn't invisible, that my life's work meant something, that if my father and brother wanted war, they were going to get it. The courthouse smelled like old paper and sweat. I had been there before for small matters, permits, property taxes, but never like this. This time, my entire life was on the line. The $500,000 family farm wasn't just property. It was decades of my blood and sacrifice. When the clerk called our case, I felt my stomach tighten. I walked to the front with Jenkins by my side. Across the aisle sat my father and Daniel, looking calm and smug, like they'd already won. My father wouldn't even meet my eyes. Daniel, though, gave me that little smirk he always wore, as if this was just another game he intended to win. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, began the hearing. Jenkins stood first, his voice steady. Your Honor, my client, Richard, has devoted over 2 decades of labor to maintaining and expanding the family farm. While his brother Daniel lived elsewhere, it was Richard who managed operations, signed contracts, and personally financed repairs. We will present records, receipts, and testimonies proving that without him, this farm would have collapsed years ago. He handed over a thick binder. I watched the judge flip through receipts with my name, contracts signed by me, tax returns showing my income tied directly to the farm. It felt like my life written in black ink on white pages. Then it was their turn. Daniel's lawyer stood, slick and confident. Your Honor, while Richard worked on the farm, It was always under his father's supervision. He was never promised ownership. The farm belongs to the father, who has every right to pass it on as he chooses. Daniel is better suited to modernize and expand the business. Richard is hardworking, but stuck in the past. I clench my fists, heat rising in my chest. Hardworking, but stuck in the past. That was their entire argument? That all my years of sacrifice meant nothing because Daniel wore nicer suits? When it was my turn to speak, I stood and faced the judge directly. My voice trembled at first, but the words came stronger with every sentence. Your Honor, I started working that farm before I was even old enough to drive. I gave up weekends, friends, and opportunities because my father told me this land would be mine one day. While Daniel was in the city, I was out there in the fields, rain or shine. When the barn roof collapsed in a storm, I rebuilt it with my own two hands. When the tractor broke down, I paid for the parts myself. Without me, that farm would have died long ago. And now, after decades, I'm told it means nothing, that I'm just stuck in the past. No, I won't accept that. The room was silent. Even the judge leaned back, watching me carefully. Then came the testimonies. One by one, neighbors and suppliers spoke. Mr. Harris, the feed supplier, said, I never dealt with Daniel, not once. Richard was the one making the calls, paying the bills, keeping the farm alive. Mrs. Lane, our neighbor, added, I saw Richard out there every morning, every night. Daniel only came around to drink a beer on holidays. Each word felt like a weight lifted off my chest. For once, people were seeing the truth, not the version Daniel and my father spun. But then my father finally spoke, his voice cold. Richard did work hard. I won't deny that. But I never promised him the farm. He worked because he was my son, because family pulls its weight. Ownership was never guaranteed. The decision is mine, and I believe Daniel is the future. Hearing those words hurt more than I expected. Not because of the farm, but because in that moment I realized my father never truly saw me. Not as a man, not as a son, not as someone worthy of respect. The judge adjourned for the day, saying she needed time to review the evidence. As we walked out, Daniel brushed past me, whispering, You can't fight blood, Richard. Dad will always choose me. I stopped, turned, and looked him dead in the eye. Then it's not just about Dad anymore. It's about the truth. And the truth is, you don't deserve that farm. He sneered and walked off, but I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. For the first time, I knew he realized I wasn't going to roll over. That night, lying in bed, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and determination. The farm wasn't just soil and barns. It was proof of my worth, of the years my father had ignored me. And if I had to fight every last ounce of pride and favoritism in that family, I would, because this wasn't just about land anymore. That IT was about finally being seen. The second hearing was worse than the first. By then, the tension in the family had grown into open hostility. My father wouldn't look at me at all. He sat rigid on one side of the courtroom, arms crossed, staring at the judge like I wasn't even in the room. Daniel, on the other hand, looked at me constantly, his smirk growing wider each time his lawyer spoke, as if every word was another nail in my coffin. That day, their lawyer brought out the heavy artillery. He painted Daniel as the future of the farm, saying he had business knowledge, connections, and vision to take the $500,000 property into modern times. He even claimed I lacked financial literacy and management skills, insinuating I was nothing more than a laborer who couldn't think beyond fixing fences and planting seed. I felt rage boiling inside me. But Jenkins leaned close and whispered, Stay calm. The judge already knows your work. Let the facts speak. When it was our turn, Jenkins stood tall. Your Honor, my client is not a mere laborer. He has proof of managing the farm's accounts for over 15 years, purchasing equipment, arranging contracts, and negotiating with suppliers. Without him, this farm would not have survived droughts, storms, or rising costs. We're not here because he wants a handout. We're here because he earned what his father is trying to strip away. Then I was called to the stand. I gripped the edge of the wooden podium, my palms sweaty, my throat dry. But when I spoke, the words poured out like fire. I gave my life to that land. I started before I was old enough to shave. I missed birthdays, weddings, and vacations because the farm needed me. I poured not just labor, but money into it, out of my own pocket, when my father didn't have enough. I wasn't just helping, I was running it. And now I'm told I don't deserve it, that I'm not good enough to inherit what I kept alive with my own hands. That's not just unfair, it's betrayal. The courtroom was silent, except for my voice. Even Daniel stopped smirking for a moment. Then, to my surprise, the judge asked my father to speak again. "Mr. Collins," she said, "you've heard your son's testimony. Do you dispute that he sustained this farm for the past 2 decades?" My father shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. "Richard worked hard, yes. But he worked because he was my son. That doesn't entitle him to ownership. Daniel is the one who can move us forward. Richard is stuck in the past." That word again, stuck. It burned in my ears. For years, that was how they had dismissed me. Not smart enough, not ambitious enough, not modern enough. Just stuck that I looked straight at the judge. If being stuck means holding this farm together while my brother was off living in the city, then maybe being stuck is what kept our family from losing everything. The judge's eyes lingered on me a moment longer before she nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Collins." Outside the courthouse during the recess, the confrontation I had been dreading finally erupted. Daniel cornered me near the steps, his voice low and venomous. "You're pathetic, Richard. You think some receipts and neighbor testimonies make you worthy? Dad will never choose you. He's always wanted me. You're just wasting everyone's time." I stepped closer, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "Then let the judge decide. Because I'm done living under Dad's favoritism. This isn't about his approval anymore. This is about the truth." Daniel scoffed, but I saw his mask crack for the first time. A flash of doubt, a flicker of fear. He knew I had something he didn't. Proof. When we reconvened, Jenkins presented our strongest piece of evidence yet. Financial logs showing that in the last 10 years, over 70% of farm expenses have been covered through my direct accounts. Repairs, machinery, feed. It was my name, my money, my responsibility. That Daniel's lawyer tried to spin it, saying I had volunteered, but the judge's face hardened. She leaned forward. "This does not look like mere volunteering. This looks like soul management." For the first time, I felt the tide turn, but I also knew the decision wasn't final. One more hearing remained, and with my father's stubbornness and Daniel's arrogance, the final battle would be the hardest of all. That night, lying awake in my dark room, I realized something. Winning wasn't just about land or money anymore. Winning was about reclaiming the years I had been dismissed, proving that I was more than just the overlooked son in muddy boots. This wasn't just a legal fight, that IT was the fight for my dignity. The final hearing felt like the longest day of my life. I walked into the courthouse with my head held high, but inside my chest, my heart hammered like a drum. This wasn't just another day in court. This was the day that would decide whether decades of sacrifice meant something or whether I would be erased from my own family's legacy. The judge began by reviewing the evidence, her voice calm but firm. She listed everything: the financial logs showing my contributions, the testimonies from neighbors and suppliers, the receipts with my name on them. With each word, I felt a flicker of hope, but I kept my expression steady. Across the aisle, Daniel squirmed in his seat, his smirk gone, his jaw tight. My father sat stiff, his face pale, as if he finally realized the weight of what was happening. Then came the final statements. Daniel's lawyer stood first, his tone sharp and almost desperate. "Your Honor, at the end of the day, the farm belongs to Mr. Collins Sr. He has the right to decide what to do with his property. Richard may have contributed, but contributions do not equal ownership. Passing the farm to Daniel is within his father's rights, and it's what will secure the future." Then it was Jenkins' turn. He rose slowly, his voice clear and unwavering. "Your Honor, this is not just about property. It's about fairness. Richard didn't just contribute. He sustained the farm. He invested his life, his labor, his money. Without him, there would be no farm left to pass on. To deny him now is not only unjust, it is cruel. He isn't asking for favoritism. He is asking for recognition of what is rightfully his." The judge looked down at her notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she set her papers aside and spoke directly. In reviewing the evidence, it is clear to this court that Richard has acted not as a mere helper, but as the effective manager and financial backbone of the farm for over 2 decades. While the father's wishes carry weight, they cannot erase the reality of Richard's contributions. Therefore, the court recognizes Richard's legal claim to ownership. The deed shall be transferred to him as primary beneficiary. The words hit me like a thunderclap. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then it sank in. I had won. The farm was mine. The land I had bled for, sweated for, cried over. It was finally recognized as mine. Daniel shot up from his chair, his face red with fury. This is ridiculous. He tricked you. He's nothing without me. The judge slammed her gavel. Sit down, Mr. Collins, or you'll be removed. My father didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the table, his shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked small, defeated. As we walked out of the courthouse, Daniel stormed past me without a word. My father stopped briefly, his eyes meeting mine. There was no apology, no warmth, just a flicker of something that might have been regret. Then he walked away too. I stood on the courthouse steps, the sun breaking through the clouds, and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 years. That night, I drove back to the farm. I walked the fields, ran my hand along the fences I had repaired countless times, stood in the barn I had rebuilt after storms. For the first time, it truly felt like mine. Not just in labor, but in name. I thought back on everything. The nights I worked alone in the dark, the years of being told I wasn't enough, the moment my father tried to strip me of my legacy. And now, standing there in the quiet of the land I had fought for, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. My name is Richard. I am 42 years old. My father tried to cut me out of the $500,000 family farm and give it to my brother. But I fought back and I won. And in winning, I finally proved that my worth could never again be denied.